1483, two brothers play at the Tower of London. The 12-year-old King Edward V and his little brother Richard. They are waiting for Edward's coronation. But suddenly their lives take an unexpected turn. All traces of the boys completely vanish. Just what or who is behind the mystery of the two princes in the tower? For many years, two groups have been fighting for power, the houses of York and Lancaster. There had been many violent battles and power passed back and forth. Today, we know these struggles as the Wars of the Roses. In 1471, Edward IV of York became king, and he had a brother, Richard. Edward IV married Elizabeth Woodville. She had a brother called Anthony, but the Woodvilles were not very popular at court. In particular, Richard and his allies were not very fond of them. Edward IV and Elizabeth had many children, including two sons, the two princes. The oldest and heir to the throne was also called Edward, like his father, and he lived with his uncle Anthony. In 1483, King Edward IV died. This meant that his son Edward was now king, but he was only 12 years old. Reportedly, Edward IV had wanted the boy's Uncle Richard to become Lord Protector. Uncle Richard would help the young king to rule until he was older and he would have a coronation. But the Woodvilles were uneasy about sharing power. They wanted Edward's coronation to happen as soon as possible. But Richard and his allies were worried about the Woodvilles. They didn't want them to gain any more power. So young Edward was caught in the middle. The two sides of his family just didn't trust each other. And it seemed whoever had control of the young king had the power. The Woodvilles set off with Edward to London to prepare for his coronation. But along the way, Uncle Richard caught up with them, seized Edward, and arrested Uncle Anthony. Elizabeth was terrified and fled to safety. Edward was taken to the Tower of London, and not long after, his little brother joined him there. Plans for Edward's coronation had already begun, and for now, the boys seemed comfortable at the Tower. They were seen playing happily together. But soon, everything changed. A shocking announcement was made about their parents. Officials declared that Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville's marriage had not been legal. This meant that young Edward was not the legal heir and could not be king. Instead, within weeks, Uncle Richard became King Richard III. The two princes stayed at the Tower. They were seen there in 1483, but not long after, all traces of them completely disappeared. Rumours began about what might have happened to them. Many people thought that they were dead. Richard III was king for 2 years until the Battle of Bosworth, when he was defeated by Henry Tudor. Henry Tudor was distantly related to the House of Lancaster, and he wanted to be king, so he did two things. Firstly, he declared that Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville's marriage had been legal. Then he married the prince's sister, who was now next in line for the throne. By doing this, they brought together the houses of York and Lancaster and ended the Wars of the Roses. Henry Tudor's court depicted Richard III as a villain. Many people thought he was responsible for the prince's disappearance and even their murder, but nobody seemed to know for sure. But all of this worked well for Henry Tudor too. Without the princes in the picture, he was able to be king himself. Fast forward to 1674. Two children's skeletons were found hidden at the Tower of London. Some people thought that these were the remains of the two princes and they were buried at Westminster Abbey. Then, in 1933, a closer investigation of the bones revealed that they were of two children, aged 10 and 12 years old. The bones were once again laid to rest. Modern DNA analysis could tell us if these remains belong to the two princes, but all requests to study them have been refused. So what happened to the two princes in the tower? We might never know, but there are lots of clues and new research might tell us even more. So for now, you'll have to decide for yourselves.